for your time on SABC News. How do I, as a consumer, cope with all of these increases?
Okay, it's quite difficult because everything revolves around money and it starts with a budget. So the first place you start with is a budget, because the budget will determine like where you're spending non-essential money. So it will be things like, do you really need it or do you really want it? So we're emotional human beings, so because of all these increases, we now have to adjust elsewhere. So now we really have to look carefully as to whether we want or really need something. And we know we're driven by emotions, but we need to control that. So when you do your budget, you then look seriously and you'll be unpleasantly surprised at how much money you do spend on non-essential items.
Mm-hmm. How do you make that differentiation if perhaps we're looking at our household costs? We know that Eskom consumers will be paying about 14% more for petrol. When I'm looking at my household budget, what do I need to cut down on? What are those non-essential things?
Okay, on the household budget, obviously, we've had a lot of information on how to cut on electricity. But non-essential items would be what you call your consumption items, your clothes, like how much are you spending on clothes, like food. Do you take food to work or do you buy from the canteen? Do you have many coffees from the coffee shop? So those are things that you can reduce or do without or make it less expensive.
Mm-hmm. What about consumers who would say that they're already cut down quite fine to the bone and there's not much more room to maneuver? How do you then take a step back and change quite large things about how you use money?
Okay, inherently you're a spender or a saver. So sometimes we say we've cut down to the bone, sometimes we haven't. So then you really have to review the budget again and then say, okay, maybe I really want this, but it's a non-essential item, whereas before I categorized it as essential. So it comes back to I have to then make a plan to live within my means, or I have to find additional income, you know, a side job, or generate some income from some hobby or something. And the key is also to work as long as you can because of inflation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are good financial decisions? And I know you've touched on a few of them already, but how do we also move away from that emotional state and make those good financial decisions going forward? Okay,
the good financial decisions is you have to be a saver, because you work for 30 years, but you might be in retirement for 30 years. But the way we're going forward and living for very long, you would have to live for longer. So the first thing is adjust your mindset as to how you view money. So you have to cut down, I would say the first thing would be a car with the petrol prices. Do you really need that expensive car? And then the second thing, so it would be curbing your emotional. So you have to understand you're emotional, but you just have to control it. The second thing is you would have to most probably look at like where are you spending money on debt? Servicing debt is the most expensive item. So the faster you pay off your debt, higher interest rate first, and start to, and then you will actually have money, so you'll be able to spend. Most people might, well, not most people, but many people could have 1 or 2 credit cards. That's the worst thing to do, because once you extend your credit on one credit card, human nature makes you extend it on the other one, but it's money that you actually don't have. Mm-hmm. So the only advice I can say is reduce your debt, get out of debt, so that you're in a position to save some money. So even if you don't earn much, even save a little bit. You have to get into a mindset of saving.
So that was my next question. I'd like to stay on it, because not all of our viewers perhaps are driving expensive cars. Some people are working, getting the bare minimum and making do with the bare minimum. How does someone like that save when your salary is just getting you through?
Okay, that's where you would have to maybe think of a bit out of the box, maybe carpooling or some other ideas to reduce your transport costs, because they're quite large. And then you would have to maybe think of additional income. I think in the environment going forward, we can't just say we want one job. So if there may be 2 people in the household, one of you maybe has to take on additional work, maybe a little job in the evening or whatever you can do. So the idea then is, if you're just barely making ends meet, you have to think, what else can I do to get additional income if I can't cut the budget anymore?
Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Rosemary Stephenson, Senior Manager at Alexander Forbes, joining me in studio there. More business news after the break. Do stay with us.